March 11th, 2020, a seemingly regular date, was anything but for the Detroit Pistons, because not only was this the final day of the 2019-20 season, but this was the end of a decade of aimless mediocrity capped off in the most fitting way possible, with the Pistons' final day lineup consisting of Brandon Knight, Thon Maker, Svi Mykhailiuk, Tony Snell, and Christian Wood. Now, just 2 seasons later, the Pistons have gone from the most directionless and desolate franchise in basketball to a team that boasts a backcourt of Cade Cunningham and Jaden Ivey, alongside Saddiq Bey, Jalen Duren, and another max slot that could be afforded to the likes of Miles Bridges. To say the Pistons have turned things around would be an understatement. What the Detroit Pistons are doing right now is shaping up to be one of the most exciting and effective rebuilds in recent memory.
The idea of joining Cade Cunningham in that backcourt, what's your first thought?
Different, special. To play with a guy like Cade, he wants to win, and they got good pieces, and I think we can compete.
Now, to truly understand the extent of this rebuild, let's just go back in time for a second. I mentioned the end of the 2020 season. Well, 2 weeks prior to that, Bleacher Report released an article titled "The Best Young Cores in the NBA," in which they ranked 16 of the best young cores, and only a handful of those teams were playoff teams. Effectively, it was all the worst teams in the league and how good their young talent was. Well, the Pistons didn't make the cut. They weren't in the top 16. Despite being a terrible team, they didn't have any young talent either. Their hopes and future was pinned on rookie Sekou Doumbouya, Luke Kennard, and Bruce Brown. I am being dead serious. That's what the Pistons were building with. That's when this man arrived. And undoubtedly, Troy Weaver has been the turning point and the catalyst for the revival and the straight up turnaround of this franchise. Which brings us to the current day. Without even mentioning a potential Bridges or Ayton type of signing, or any number of veteran players that they could add to this roster, the Pistons could roll out a lineup of Cade, Ivey, Bey, Livers, and Duren, which on the surface might still seem a year or two away, which it very likely is. But not only is that a supremely talented starting lineup, with Cade and Saddiq having already proven themselves as 2 of the best young players in the NBA, but think about how this lineup pieces together. You have 3 potentially great 3-point shooters in Cade, Bey, and Livers. And yes, don't let the numbers fool you, Cade Cunningham will be a career 38 to 40% 3-point shooter. Oh, but he shot 32% and was inefficient in his rookie season. Yeah, he also missed like his first 20 threes, so that's skewed. He will be a good 3-point shooter, book it. But in addition to the shooting, those 3 guys have all proven to be good defenders at the NBA level. And you bring in 2 guys in Duren and Ivey that provide extraterrestrial type of athleticism. If that sounds like a reach, well,
used to make a call like that. Exploding off the bounce and gets to the rim for the hammer. High level.
Moore picks the pass away from Duren. A steal for the high flying Moore. Oh my goodness! Duren with an electric rejection.
And then when you think about what a team needs to succeed in the modern NBA as a collective, you need multiple ball handlers and shot creators. Tick, tick, and tick. The Pistons could potentially have 4 of those guys if they sign someone like a Bridges. In addition to this, you need guys that can play with and without the ball, which everyone in that lineup has proven they can do. And oh yeah, you need guys that are not only capable defenders from a physical standpoint, but most importantly, willing defenders. And if you have any question marks over Ivey's defensive ability or defensive enthusiasm, well, this is what he said.
What do you feel like is something you want to bring to the table from day one?
That defensive presence. I think that's the biggest thing, bringing that defensive energy, to Detroit. And, we got to get Detroit back to winning again. So that's the biggest thing.
But with that in mind, let's focus a little bit more on Jalen Duren and Jaden Ivey, and why Troy Weaver was so focused on those 2 players in particular, going as far as robbing the New York Knicks, which at this point is just kind of a tradition for every NBA franchise. And let's start off with Jaden Ivey, because when he's willing to use his athleticism to play defense, that makes him a very scary player because offensively, he can get downhill better than anyone in this draft class. That's why he's drawn comparisons to the likes of Ja Morant and Victor Oladipo. But more importantly, it's the dynamic that him and Cade could potentially have. Watch this example. Ivey gets the ball with the defense still setting up in transition. He drives straight past the first defender before collapsing the defense and kicking it out to the open shooter for three. Well, how does this involve Cade, you might ask? Well, like I mentioned before, Cade is going to be a good three-point shooter. He plays off the ball and he can spot up from the corner or from the wings, similar to Bay and Livers. And for him to create open shots for those guys is going to be crucial because Cade is going to be doing the same for the other guys as well. But it's also the partnership that Ivey, Cade, and even Killian Hayes. Yes, Killian Hayes. And the partnership those guys will have with Duren. Because all three of these guys can run the pick and roll and throw lobs. And when you're throwing lobs to someone like this, good things happen.
Oh, and Duren the finish off the feed from Lomax.
But it's more than just the dunks or the assists that they're going to pick up. It's so important for guys like Cade and Ivey in particular to have those lob threats in addition to the spacing that is going to be on this team because it allows them to finish around the rim and have defenders in two minds. It's the same reason Cade's numbers skyrocketed when Marvin Bagley came into the team. He's a solid player, but it's because of his lob threat and his ability to finish around the rim that draws the attention of opposition centers, which allowed Cade to slalom in around the rim and finish more effectively. And just speaking of Duren, offensively isn't his major draw card, it's defensively where he could really shine for a Detroit team that, as I said, is already starting to build an identity on that end of the floor. Because not only is he an absolute freak shot blocker using his 7'5" wingspan and crazy athleticism, but he can also move his feet on the perimeter, which we all know is crucial in the modern NBA. Watch this clip where he's switched onto a guard, the guard tries to take him off the dribble, but even with the slight separation he creates, it's nowhere near enough to finish over Duren, so he's forced to kick it out before it's eventually a missed shot later down the line. There's a reason Troy Weaver was so desperate to trade up and get Duren, because not only does his lob threat provide great opportunities for Killian, Cade, and Ivey, but also defensively, when you have a guy with this shot blocking ability on a team that has the perimeter guards and will allow him to potentially roam like Robert Williams does for the Celtics, well, you could get a defense maybe like the Celtics. Obviously, that is still a few years away, but that's the kind of defense the Pistons are potentially building. And then offensively, well, the sky is the limit when you have Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey, and those guys that I just mentioned, potentially Miles Bridges as well. Yeah, the Pistons are building something pretty damn good, and the turnaround has been nothing short of incredible. Drop a like, subscribe to the channel, have a nice day, thanks, bye.